All right, hello everybody. My name is LP Mainville. I'm the Athlete Development Director for the OVA. And again, a pleasure for me to be here with you doing this session. This is part of our sessions on the Early Contact Initiative. So this is one of the sessions where we're trying to help you coaches with getting ready for your season and getting ready for practices so that you can support your athletes as best as you can and so that you feel you're equipped to do so. So in this session today, we are talking about planning a practice for 6-on-6 rally ball. So I will walk you through my process of doing that, and we're going to do that by using the 6v6 rally ball seasonal plan template. All right, and I will share my screen in a second and show you what that looks like. I just want to remind you to, you can ask your questions in the chat, and I will answer them as we go, as well as just remind you that the stuff that I'm going to talk about today, obviously, is what I would do based on my experience and also what I know of the age group that we're going to talk about. So typically, when we're talking about 6-on-6 rally ball, we are talking about mainly 13U athletes. Okay, so I will show you what my process is. Now, you may have a process that's completely different, and that's okay. By no means do I pretend that I have the best way to approach practice planning and designing drills, but I think it will be interesting for those of you watching to perhaps get a different perspective and see how a practice can be planned fairly easily and quickly if you have a solid seasonal plan that you've put the time in to building at the beginning of your season. Okay, so I'll get right into it. I'm going to share my screen right here and then get to our seasonal plan. So let me pop it up here. Okay, so this is our seasonal plan for rally ball 6v6. I'm using the boys one here, but it doesn't matter. It looks almost exactly the same for the girls, other than the dates of the tournaments. So this is what we're going to use to plan our practice. And just to show you, okay, I already have some information in here just so that we can plan this practice together a little faster and fit it in an hour. This is going to be the drill design template that I'm going to be using. Maybe a little small, so let me make it a bit bigger for everybody. Okay, so at the top here, we have some information about the team in the session, and then we get into each activity, going through each of the drills that we're going to do in our session. Okay, and then we'll go over the different sections of these drill plans as we plan our activities. Okay, so let's talk about the information that's going to be in this box right here at the top. All right, so first we need to know kind of when we are in the year, right? We're going to create a little bit of context here so that we can plan our session. Okay, so we have a rally ball 6v6 boys team. So we know that they're, for the main part, 13U. You can see here in our main age group. We're going to pretend that we have 12 athletes just because that's the reality for a lot of the clubs at that level. You want to have your 12 athletes, and we're going to also pretend that you have only one court because, again, that's the reality of most clubs and teams at that age group in Ontario. It's that you only have access to the one court, right? So that's what we're going to do to plan our practice. All right. So usually I would put this information over here to our players. The length of our session is 120 minutes because that's what we have. And if you look at our seasonal plan, we will see that this is actually what's happening. So for each line here, as a reminder, the information here, the numbers represent the number of hours that you're spending on different aspects of training for each of your session. Okay, so in this case, in our plan on Monday, most of the time we spend an hour and a half doing skills training and then a half an hour doing physical training. Okay, and that's what we've built into our seasonal plan. On Wednesdays, we spend some time doing some skills training and then a little bit of competition within our practice. Okay, so for today, I've chosen week 6. Why? Well, last time we chose, when I did the forward 4 video, we chose a week where we had a tournament. So I wanted to have a different context in case some of you were watching this and wanted to see a different approach when we were in a different situation. So I've chosen week 6, okay? And I've chosen the Monday practice, again, to be different. Last time we did a Wednesday practice. So let's do a Monday practice this time. So that's what I've written here, okay? Week 6, November 8, because we know that the date in here is the date of the Monday of the week. Okay, so we've chosen the Monday for our session, right? What else do we have in here? And here we have the priority skill. How do I know that my priority skill is passing? Well, if I go down my seasonal plan as I'm planning my practice, and it could be Sunday night, and I know I have a practice on the Monday, I go down here and look at my blue square, and I see that on the week of November 8, on the Monday, my priority is going to be passing. So that means, because like I'm following this plan and I've built this plan in a way where I know I'm going to address all the skills over the course of the season, I know that this week on the Monday, I need to focus on passing. Okay. Not only that, but I also have put in here some letters, and those letters, based on our seasonal plan template, refer to specific teaching points. Right. So not only do I know that the focus of my session is going to be on passing, this is what all of my acquisition drills are really going to be about. Doesn't mean we're not going to do any other skills, but that's going to be the main one we're going to try to improve. Okay. Well, I also know that because C is a letter in here, if I go to teaching points and I go to passing, C, this is going to be the aspect of passing I'm going to focus on. Okay. We know that athletes have a limited ability to focus and learn. Okay. They have just like anybody else. Okay. If they're given too much information, they're not going to retain anything. So this is going to be the main focus of the session when we talk about passing. So that's awesome. So now in 30 seconds, I know what I'm going to work on and what my main teaching points are going to be. All right. So I'll go back here. I have this. So if I go to my practice plan, I've put that in here. I said, okay, priority skill is passing. Okay. And in here, in my session objectives, I'm going to kind of summarize what I've just talked about. And that's why we have, if I just zoom in a little bit, the focus of our practice being to improve passing, free balls, and serve receive. Okay. Because obviously with triple ball, we have the free ball sequence that we're going to want to work on, but we also have the serve receive sequence that we need to train. So one of the things we're going to try to do is we're going to try to achieve more consistency in passing the ball to the net. Right now, I've done a little bit of imagination here. Okay. And we're going to imagine this together. All right. Because this is something that you're going to do during your season. November 8th, okay, is the Monday right after our first competition of the year. Our first competition was during the week of November 1st, but because we always put the competition at the end of the week, the competition actually happened on probably November 6th or 7th, which was the weekend at the end of this week. So let's presume the tournament was on Saturday. It's 2 days before our practice because we're practicing on the Monday. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we have information on our team, but from the weekend. We've looked at them. We've taken some stats, right? Probably taking these stats here, right? That are all of our system and tactical objectives. And we realize that when we look at passing, because we know this is our focus for this week, we realize that the thing that we really need to work on with passing is actually that the ball is not getting to the net. So we were passing the ball and it was staying off the net a lot, both on free balls and on the serve. And so when we address passing, and specifically the teaching point of having the shoulders over the hips, well, we know that's going to help us pass the ball to the net. So in our session objective, we can summarize that one of our goals is to achieve more consistency in passing the ball to the net. Okay, so that's directly related to one thing that we saw at our tournament. And then we're going to create an objective that includes our main teaching point in here. And if we had more than one, we could include them all. But we're going to say, okay, improve body position when passing with our shoulders in front of the hips. And since this is very technical and we also want to include something related to cue reading and decision making, we are going to say that we also want to improve cue reading and decision making, specifically ball responsibility. Okay, and we're going to talk about calling the ball early. All right, so we were at our tournament and noticed that not only do we not bring the ball to the net, but we also have a problem because it's the first event of the year with calling whose ball is whose. And then we got some aces because of that. So we're going to make sure that we include when we work on our cue reading and decision making, some aspects of ball responsibility. Okay. Another thing about this plan is that I always have a little box for messages if I want to remember to tell anything to the kids. It's going to be in here. All right. Now, before we start planning our session, okay. Now I'm talking about all of this, but when you do this yourself, this reflection takes less than a minute. Okay, you get here. Where's my week? What did I just do? Okay. On Monday, I do an hour and a half of skills. Oh, half an hour in physical training. I've determined what I'm doing for skills already. I know what my focus is. Now I need to go and see what this half an hour of physical training involves. So let's go down here. And I see that for the week of November 8th, I've planned on doing flexibility, mobility work, and balance work. And this is awesome. And this is not by chance, right? I've planned this at the beginning of my season when I did my season plan, because I knew that this was going to happen on a Monday right after a competition. Okay, so presumably this is the first event of the year. My athletes are probably sore. They played a lot on a Saturday. Now they were sore on a Sunday, but soreness really gets the worst 2 days after. So really on the Monday, they're probably the most sore they're going to be, right? And so I want to work with that, okay? And that's why I've chosen that these skills for physical training on the Monday, because I thought that I could achieve two things. We can improve these skills, but we can also give the athletes a chance to kind of unwind and work through their soreness, okay, during practice, all right? And so that practice is going to end up being a little bit low impact, which is another reason why we have passing here. All right, so we can focus on passing and work with the fatigue that our players maybe have accumulated through their tournament. All right, so now I know that I'm going to be working flexibility and mobility and balance. Excellent. Once I go to plan my my drills, I'm probably also going to want to look at this, because I know that at this point in my season, I'm still working on a 5-player server seat. Okay, so as I know that, it may help me set up my drills later. So I just want to take a quick look, okay, to know that. So again, checking all of this takes 2 minutes. Now I have all this information, I can go and start planning my practice. Okay. Any questions before we start playing our drills? I'm gonna look in the chat. Okay. So are you considering warm up as physical training? Or is it separate? Good question. So I usually consider it depends. And you're going to see it in this example. Okay, Calvin, the last week when we talked about the 4-on-4 activity, we considered our warm up as part of our technical time. Okay, so we considered our warm up as part of this time here. Okay, why? Because we did a warm up with a ball, and the athletes had a chance to get warm while touching the ball, okay, and working on skills. So we had part of this. Now, as you'll see in this one, we're going to have a different approach. Our warm up actually is going to include a big part of this mobility and flexibility training that we want to include in our practice, right? So this, depending on what you want to do, you could put it at the end of the practice. You could put your half hour at the end of the session, or you can put it at the beginning, or you can put it in the middle. You can really do anything you want with it, as long as it fits with your plan, okay? So let's go to that plan, and you'll see what I mean by that. So because we play on a Saturday, and I'm assuming players are sore, and I want to work on flexibility, mobility, I know that a good time to do that is when the athletes are actually not too warm, like cold. It's really good to actually get the body moving. So I'm actually going to put it at the beginning of practice. So I'm going to, in this case, use the physical training as my warm-up. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to set up some warm-up yoga. So I'm going to do some sort of yoga session. Okay. Now, to do this, I would have consulted with a yoga instructor or a physical trainer, someone who knows what they're doing, and actually come up with a series of movements. I probably would have done that at the beginning of the season so that I knew I had some material to work with. Okay. But the point is, that's going to be my warm up. And what we're going to do for the purpose of this activity is going to be to get rid of soreness. Okay. And it's going to be to improve joint mobility and stability while warming up the body. So we're going to address both flexibility, mobility, and also balance. How? Well, by using different yoga poses, some that are really going through some flow and getting the body moving, but then getting into some warrior poses where you're both stretching, for example, the big muscle groups such as the hip flexors, the quads, the glutes, also probably some child poses, working on our lats, and probably a couple of planks to activate the core a little bit, and working on balance. Okay, because we not only had flexibility and mobility, but we also had balance in our physical skills that we wanted to work on. Okay, so by kind of getting into that over 20-25 minutes, we can really start working that mobility, but also getting the body a bit warm so that we're ready to get into our practice after. Okay, so this kind of gradual warm up through yoga gets addresses our physical skill training, and it also considers the fact that we just played a tournament, and it's kind of a nice transition into let's get back to training volleyball. Okay, so that's how I'm going to set up my warm up. Now, I described this here. There's probably not much to include in here for now. All right, we're not going to. I mean, you could potentially plan and chart where you want your players on the court, but unnecessary at this point in time. All I'm going to do is kind of skip all these sections that are very specific to volleyball drills and get right to the last one, and note that in this activity of warm-up, I am addressing flexibility and mobility as well as balance. And I'm also going to address mindfulness and self-awareness, which are two of the skills, two of the psychological skills that I have in here. Now, if you remember the session on the seasonal plan, we talked about these being skills that we work on all the time. So I would know what these are. So when I plan my practice, if I see an opportunity to talk about these skills, I'm going to put it in. Okay, so for me, when I'm planning this session and I know I'm going to do yoga, well, I think it's a great opportunity to talk about mindfulness and self-awareness. And as we are doing the activity, using these words and bringing the intention of athletes to those concepts so that they get to practice them as we go. Okay. So I'm going to skip now to the drill sections. Okay, and we're going to work on our activities, and we're going to plan some drills together. Right. So now that I've warmed up the body and taken care of my physical training, I'm going to get into my skills practice and my skill work, and I have an hour and a half of that to do. So okay, it's all good. We did some yoga, so now we're pretty loose, but we still gotta get moving. We haven't really moved our body in space that much, right? We haven't moved forward, backward, sideways. So we're gonna kind of complete our warm up with a drill that's gonna allow us to touch the ball, so we get a feel for the ball, but also so that we get to move a little bit. And the other thing, we've planned 25 minutes for the yoga, and that's because, let's not forget, I skipped over that for now, but sorry here, waiting for the No. Okay, I don't know why this is happening. Okay, well, so remember, speed max is always in blue. Okay, in this chart, and that's because we're going to include 5 minutes at the end of our warm up at every session. This is something that we decided at the beginning of the season, and that's because maximum speed is something that's really important for the athletes at 13 years of age to work on, because they are in that window of trainability and of max accelerated adaptation for speed. Okay, so we know we're going to want to do a little bit of speed at the end of our warm up. So we did 25 minutes of flexibility mobility so that we have 5 minutes left for speed max. Okay, so I'm going to want to include that in this kind of complementary warm up drill. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, let's see here. Just want to do this. Make sure that. Oh, sorry. Again, I'm a big pen and paper guy. Now I'm doing this with you on my computer, so my apologies if there's some hiccups. Okay, so what we're gonna do, well, I want something where my players get to move and get to pass balls, and we're gonna do some passing later, so I know I want my athletes to get a chance to warm up their shoulders. So let's do a passing butterfly, and let's actually include some sprints in there so that we get our sprinting done while we're also finishing our warm up and moving around and touching balls. Okay, so that's gonna be the purpose of our activity, to complete our warm up and work on max speed. Now, another thing that we're gonna do, and that I haven't, let me see here. Okay, another thing that we're gonna do here, okay, for the purpose, is going to be to remind athletes of previous teaching points. Okay, we haven't started addressing this session's teaching points, but in my warm up, because I'm working on some skills, I want to make sure that I remind athletes of the previous teaching points that we did related to the skills. Okay, let me just see if I can make this bigger for you guys. Probably better here. Okay. Okay. Let's leave it. Let's leave it like that. All right. So the skills that are going to be involved, well, there's going to be an arm swing and some passing. Okay, because we're going to be, doing a butterfly with some athletes tossing or serving and some athletes passing. The key cues are going to be very simple for now. Okay, because it's going to be individual passing. So the cues are really going to be about where the ball's coming from, where is the ball going, where am I as a player compared to where the ball is coming from and where it needs to go. Okay, so that I have to make decisions here that are related to these cues. Okay, so where do I have to move my body? Okay, how do I get balance on contact to pass the ball? All right, and the reason why this is part of our decision is because, let's go back to our plan here. Okay, last time I worked on passing was a couple of weeks before, and my key teaching points were A and B. So if I go to teaching points for passing, A and B was shuffle to move and stable and balanced. All right. So I've actually included those in here in my key teaching points as I plan my drill, because I'm going to want to remind the athletes of them. All right. Now I have hitting shoulder back in there as well, because similarly, if I go to attacking, I see that hitting shoulder back is coded as C for attacking. And in my plan, I see that the week prior, before a tournament, we did work on attacking, and I had C as a key teaching point. Right? Again, we're trying, when we have a seasonal plan, to create practices that are consistent and work with each other all year long. All right. So as I plan my first drill, I'm going to have that kind of maintenance / reminder, okay, of those teaching points. See where the athletes are at. All right. So what will the drill look like Well, we're going to plan that together right here. So I'm just going to write it down in this section here. Okay. And then I'm going to draw it out. Right. So what this drill is going to look like is going to be a folio ball drill. Okay. And it's going to go toss, serve, okay. Pass, target, and then repeat. Okay. Essentially, what that's going to look like here on the court. Let's make it a bit bigger. It's going to look like this. Sec. I'm going to get drawing in just a second. It's going to look like this. So we're going to have a couple of players over here with the ball. Okay, maybe 3 actually. Okay, we're going to have a couple of players here passing. Target here. Same thing on the other side. Okay, so now our servers are here. Our passers are over here. And the way the movement goes is the ball goes to here and you follow your ball. So the ball goes to here, then to the target, and the target gets behind the line here. And they'll put the ball in, and then they'll follow the ball like this, right? So we're just going around in a butterfly. Okay. The things that we're going to add to this, because remember, we want to work on our sprints, is that, and we want to finish our warm-up. Okay, so we're going to add a piece, okay, and we're going to add it to our description in a second. But essentially, we're going to ask the players that when they're in this location here, okay, that after their toss, they're going to line up on this line here, okay, and they're going to execute a sprint. So they toss the ball, they're going to get to the line, and they're going to go as fast as they can to the middle, back to the attack line, and then sprint to the end. All right, before they go back into the line for passing. Right. So what that's going to do is that it actually is going to allow them to sprint for about between 6 and 10 seconds, depending on your athletes. And typically, if they go all the way around this rotation, okay, going from over here then to target and back to throwing and all that stuff, by the time they go back to here, it's going to be about a minute, and that's going to be exactly the amount of rest compared to the amount of time that we sprinted. That is recommended when you work on speed, because there's always that ratio of work to rest. Okay, that is important when you work on speed, because you don't want to, work on speed and then only take a couple seconds and do it again, because we want athletes to go max speed. They need that time to kind of recover, and kind of jogging through these stations here will kind of allow them to do that, so they can sprint again full speed when they get here. What we're going to ask them to do when they're on this side is going to be to do some sort of, put in yellow, dynamics, whatever they need, okay, as they get from this tossing position to this passing position right here, from here to here. Okay, so now we're really having a drill where our kids they're passing the ball, they're throwing it, they're serving it, they're getting some speed work, and they're also getting some dynamic stretches if any of them were still needed after our yoga. Okay, at that point I would probably make this option. Okay, so I would describe this in this section here, and I can do it quickly here. Where did my text box go? Oh, it's right here. Weird. Okay. So, follow your ball, toss, serve, pass, target, and repeat. Okay. On let's call it on A side after toss, sprint, middle, meter, and line. And then I would have on B side dynamic stretches. Okay, just gonna put that there. We know what that means. Quick description. I could probably be more detail here, but again, I want to have time to go through all of the activities. Okay, so I'm not going to complete every single section. Execution criteria here is probably time. Okay, so I'm not looking for like a number of perfect passes. I could. Okay, there's a couple of options here depending on where our athletes are at. Okay, I'm gonna put some options here. Option 1 could be 10 minutes is our execution criteria. We're gonna do this for 10 minutes. Okay, and as the shoulders get warm, then they move from tossing to serving, to down ball or whatever. Another option, okay, and I've included it in the variation here, is let's say as a group, you could be calling for, let's say, I don't know, let's say 30 good passes that they count out loud together. Then move to pass and set to target. Okay, so essentially, if your athletes were there, I would suggest that maybe in your execution criteria, that kind of states how you're going to progress in your drill, or when your drill is going to end, or how it's going to end. We could do this. We could say just 10 minutes, or once we've done 30 good passes, okay, in this scenario, then we add a target so that this player, instead of just catching the ball, sets the ball to the outside, for example, or to the middle, or to wherever you want, catches it, and then goes behind the line. Okay, so we're kind of adding another step. So we could do that as well. Okay, again, tons of ways to set up an execution criteria that's going to help you achieve your goals. Okay. But in our context, this drill with just 10 minutes would allow us to kind of remind these teaching points, work on max speed, and complete our shoulder warm up. Okay, so we would achieve all of our objectives, okay, with this drill. So now that that's done, move on to the next part of my practice. Athletes have had water, and I'm going to go and work on some acquisition. Okay, athletes at that point should be still fairly rested. Okay, mentally. It wasn't, I know we've been in the gym now for almost an hour, but sorry, a little bit more than a half an hour, but it hasn't been highly stressful physically or mentally. Okay, so we're still in a good state of mind and physically in a state of body as well for doing some learning and acquisition. Okay, so we're gonna do what we call in the NCCP language a method 1 drill. Okay, the characteristics of method 1 drill are that it's a drill where athletes have lots of repetition. They have lots of time to kind of explore. So they're kind of on their own. They can go at their own pace, learning things and getting lots of reps in a row. Okay, so not like that last warm-up drill that we did, where you were getting one pass and then you ran through and then get another one. So in the method 1 drill, you get many repetitions in a row, and you get multiple attempts at getting multiple repetitions in a row, so that you can implement feedback that you're hopefully getting from coaches in between your sets and your rounds. Okay, so we're going to set that up because it's a great way to address to do acquisition drills. Okay, for athletes, because they really get to focus on something and try to assimilate it. So the purpose of this drill, if we go back to our teaching point, is going to be to improve ball contact on passing while having our shoulders in front of our hips, okay, so that we can bring the ball back to the net, right? If I have my athletes stand up and they're straight and their shoulders are over the hips, then the arms are likely on the body or out in front, and the ball's going to just go up once I hit it, okay? So what will our skill variations be? Well, in this case, it's pretty clear that we're going to be doing some free ball passing and serve. So we're going to do both. The cues are going to be very similar to here, okay? Because again, we're working individually, so we're going to be passing on our own. There's no, at this point, it's only one passer at a time. And so these cues and decisions are going to be fairly similar. Okay, so I'm not going to complete them here. Now, the description. Okay, so what will this look like? Well, let's draw it out. Okay, and we can kind of follow with the description. But we're going to have, get my blue. We are going to have 3 groups. Okay, and the way we're going to split the court is going to be something like this. Okay, I'm going to try to show you, and then you'll see. Okay, so we're going to try to split our court something like this. Okay, you'll understand in a second. And the reason why we're going to do it this way is because we're going to want to have one player passing here with a serve, okay, coming from around this area. One player serving here, passing here with a serve coming from this area, and another player passing here with a serve coming from this area. So we have this kind of staggering effect so that we can use the entire court because we only have one court and keep it fairly safe for athletes. So they're not necessarily serving at each other, or we can keep track of that. And we can have multiple groups working on one court, getting individual reps. That's always a challenge when you want to do drills where you want one player at a time to be passing and you have 12 athletes on one court. It's always the challenge of splitting your court. And I find this is a great way to achieve that. Okay. So now that you visualize it, I'm just going to erase it and draw it out better. Okay. So we're going to be in groups of 4. And I'm going to have, again, because that's, in my opinion, the best way to split my one court so that I have room. Because I want to do I could do 3. We could do groups of 3 and then keep, one group on, for example, one group here in this quarter of the court and one group here, and do the same thing on the other side of the net. But what's gonna happen with that is then we're tossing from the same side of the net. And I really want to get the athletes to visualize the net and see a ball going over the net and passing a ball that comes over the net, because that's the game. That's the way the ball comes to them. Okay, so I could do it on the ball coming from the same side of the net, but in this situation, I just chose to have it go over because I think it's going to be more meaningful. So I'm going to have my passer here, right? He or she will be passing to a target here. In this case, because we're working with boys, I guess it's going to be a he. And then we're going to have the tosser over here with the ball. And then the same thing is going to be set up on this side. So at first, we're starting with the tosser kind of in the middle, okay, with the target here and a passer. I guess I could do P, just so that we're not mixed up. P here, and then a person with the ball. And then they go like this. Right? Like this one over here, and this one over here. Okay, now you're saying, hey, you're missing players. Yes, I am. Okay, so the extra player is standing somewhere around here, behind this passer, behind this passer, and behind this passer. And they are doing one of 2 things. They are either observing this player, okay, and they could be at this point, maybe perhaps on the side of the court so that it can see and notice if the passer has their shoulders over their hips, and perhaps provide some feedback, or at least observe and try to learn for themselves. Or they can be talking to the coach after they did their reps. Okay, so the way that the rotation of the players works is you kind of go like this: go to passing, to observing, okay, to tossing, to targeting, and then back to passing. So everybody goes through every position. All right, and this position here is important because then a coach, so myself as a coach, I can provide feedback to my players without having to stop the drill. So I can be watching this player get their repetition, and then when he gets off the court, then I give the feedback. And when he comes back around to pass, then he can implement that feedback. And I'm not stopping the drills. So there's always, players being active and passing the ball. Okay, so this flow really helps getting a lot of contacts done in your practice. So this is what I described here. Okay, so I did this ahead of time, so we're not losing time doing this here. Okay, so you can read this. Now, the one thing that I will mention is that we're going to do a progression. So, sorry, before that, what we're going to ask is for the passer to say yes if he feels that when he passed, he had his hips in front of his, his shoulders in front of his hips. Okay, so meaning that there was a little hinge at the hips at contact, which brings the shoulders down, which means that my platform is going to be oriented a little bit more towards the front of the court. So that's going to help me bring the ball to the net. So the passer is going to say yes or no, depending on how they felt their shoulders were. Okay, so this again will give us as coaches an opportunity to see what kind of self-awareness they have, right, and self-evaluation. So because of that, I'm going to put that here in psychophysical qualities, okay, to kind of indicate the skills other than technical and tactical that I want to emphasize in this drill. Okay, so self-evaluation, which again is in our seasonal plan. Okay, so execution criteria will be 4 rounds. Okay, so and we're going to have a progression. We're going to go from free ball to a throw, to perhaps down ball to a serve. All right, I think it's missing here, but you can see here for the serve. We're going to do 8 balls per athlete per round, so that's how we're going to know each round is over. And additionally, we're going to discuss with our athletes and see if they agree with this target of 5 yeses per round. They may say more. Maybe they want to have a more ambitious target for themselves to say, hey, we're going to get to 6 or 7 yeses per round. You know, regardless of where my pass is going, at least 6 or 7 times, I'm going to have my shoulders in front of my hips when I contact the ball. Okay. And then you get them to track that out of their 8 balls. And that's another way to then work on self-evaluation at the end of the drill when you ask the athletes to kind of say, hey, what were your scores? Okay. The teaching points, they are going to be the teaching points very similar to, actually, they're the ones that we talked about earlier and that we included at the top. So here it's shoulders in front of hips. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. You could have more. So if you wanted to include one of the ones that you worked on the previous week, such as balance and stable in contact that we talked about earlier, you could add that here. Okay, but mainly it's going to be this one here that we work on because we've identified it in our seasonal plan. Okay, so far so good. So now that we've done this, okay, we have just under an hour left to our practice, or about an hour. What we're going to do is, it doesn't appear here, but I put it in, and I don't know why you can't see it. It doesn't show up here in red. But this said, before water, do 5 minutes of serving. Okay, so everyone's kind of done some serving here, but before we get to water, I wrote here to just do like a couple minutes of serving. Perhaps they're just following their ball type of thing, getting some repetitions before they get some water, so that I know that they're well warmed up and they've had enough repetitions to serve accurately for our next drill. Okay, because our next drill is going to be our method 2 drill. And when I say method 2 drill, again, I refer to the NCCP terminology, and it's going to be a modified method 2. The only reason why I'm calling it method 2 is because typically method 2 drill is one where players have 2 options at the beginning. They have to make a decision between 2 options. They read some cues and then need to make one of 2 decisions. Okay, so this drill is going to be similar to that. Okay, maybe not quite in terms of how control usually a method 2 drill needs to be by the coach, but there is still going to be some element of decision making that is important, that is way beyond what we just did in the previous drill. Right. So the purpose of this drill is going to be again improving our passing by having our shoulders in front of hips, but we're also going to improve our ball responsibility and communication, okay, which is going to be the reading and decision making component. Right. So I want to do this with you guys here. So I'm going to put it down. Okay. So our skill variation is going to be servicing, okay, with forearms. Just so we're clear, we didn't really specify it anywhere else, but yeah, with arms, easier. Okay, and in terms of our cues, right, we're going to have 2 players passing the ball in this drill all the time. Okay, so the key cues is going to be, right, direction of the serve, right? It's going to be depth of the serve. In other words, trajectory, okay, that we need to keep track of, and probably speed. We can leave it like that. And the decision that we're going to have to make in this drill, again, keeping it very simple, okay, is going to be my ball or not, play it or not, right? Because there's 2 of us, and we're going to work on, A, do I have to go play this ball or not? And then on top of that, all of the other decisions that we've included in our previous drill are going to be there, because I'm still going to have to decide, where do I move? Right? Once I see the direction, depth of the serve, and once I decide that it's going to be my ball, where do I move? Where do I pass the ball to, etc. Okay, so those are going to be our key decisions. So what will this drill look like? Well, again, we're going to, just 1 second. Oops. Let's do this here. Okay. Here. We're going to split our court in half. Something like this. Oh, it's not showing. Oh, that's because I wasn't even looking at it properly. Okay, it's right here. So we're going to split our court in half. I'm going to have 2 pressers. Oh, sorry, I'm just like this there. 2 pressers over here, 1 target. Okay, and then we can have 2 servers over here with the ball, and then there can be another player who's right here observing or helping this target, for example, getting the balls back to the servers. And we do the same thing on the other side. Again, staggering so that we have we don't have like 4 players trying to pass in the back row right over here. Right, so we're keeping it a little safer for everybody. Okay, and all our players are there and ready to go. And the way this drill works is very simple. The ball is served over here, okay, and the ball is passed back to the target. You catch a ball, send it over. Okay, you could add a layer here if you wanted this attack, like this person to like try to do an attacking approach. There's always ways to adapt drills to what your needs are, but we're not going to do that in here. We're keeping it simple. Now, the one thing that I will say, and I should have drawn that in here from the get-go, is remember we talked about this section here, system and tactical objectives. And I remember that my team is passing with a 5-player W serve receive configuration right now. And so I'm going to want to recreate the types of relationship between the players that I have in this configuration of passing. What does that mean? Well, if you remember what a W formation looks like, and I'll show you here on this other chord, is we have, and especially because again, we have our setter in 3. You remember this, setter in position 3. Okay, so setter is here in position 3. And I've got my, oh, sorry. Yeah, it will work here. And then I have position 4 passing on this side, position 2 passing on this side and attacking to the pins. Then I have position 6 in front here. Okay. And position 1 and 5 over here. Now it looks like an M, but I should have drawn it on the bottom. If you reverse this, it actually looks like a W. Okay, so that's our 5-player W. So I'm probably going to want to set up in my half court. Okay, so look at the half court. I'm probably going to want to set up my players in some sort of position like this. Okay, so if I wanted to be very accurate, I would go here and place my passers, make sure that they are positioned like this. Okay, so that they can really work on those cues. Direction of the serve is also depth of the serve. Okay, so they can decide whether it's my ball or not. Okay, and they can practice that, because if the ball is short here, it's probably going to be this player's. If the ball's a bit deeper, it's probably going to be this player, especially if it's in the seam. Okay, so again, that's how we make sure that we are consistent and that we're always working towards the goals that we've set up in our season plan. Okay, make sense? So we're going to do this in our execution criteria. Is going to be pretty simple. So the description is essentially what I've just painted on here. Now, again, the key teaching points, just before I get to execution criteria, are very similar to what we had before in terms of shoulders in front of hips. But now, because we have 2 passers, we added a call the ball before the net. So try to identify that trajectory really, really early and call your intention to either pass the ball, like to pass the ball early, right? And one message that I like to give the athletes is that if you think it's yours, then it's yours, and you go for it. And I'd rather have 2 players go for the same ball than no players go for the ball, right? So another kind of teaching point and cue word that I can give athletes to work with, right? And obviously, we're going to be working on the communication skill that we have in our season plan. The execution criteria. So how are we going to get out of this drill? Well, it depends. We can do number of reps. That could be 10 serves. But depending on how the athletes are at this point, we could also have a number of good execution. Okay, so it could be 10 passes with good call and shoulders, hips. I'm just going to summarize it here. Okay. So I'd like to include, okay, our teaching point in our execution criteria. So then we're more precise in our coaching and more detail. Okay. Or you could actually set, let's leave it to that. Okay. I think that for now, these would be 2 good execution criteria you could have for the athletes. And then you would just say 2 rounds for each player. So they would rotate. So after these 2 are done, 2 more, these 2 here would go pass, these 2 would go serve, and so on. And so everyone would get to go twice, okay, for their passes. And after 25 minutes, we would have that nice progression. We would have done that drill where athletes are now reading the ball more and all that stuff. And we would have at the end of this about 20-25 minutes left if everything goes well. And we're going to want to put this into some sort of simulated play, SP, simulated play game. Okay. So in our plan here, we don't have, on Mondays, we don't have weekday competition. So I don't need to do 6-on-6. And I want to do 3-on-3 because I know that it's going to provide a lot of contacts and touches to my athletes. Okay. And what I'm going to do is set up a drill, and I see we're getting close to an hour here. Actually, we're at the hour mark. So, oops, I'm just going to draw it out. Okay. And then we're going to talk about what that drill could look like. Okay. So I've done all this work on passing. Now I want to do some 3-on-3, so I have lots of repetitions. So I'm going to draw a line here, split my court in half. Again, I love splitting court when we, especially with the young players, they're smaller, so it seems like the court has more room, and you can get all of them active at the same time, right? So you're maximizing reps. You're not having them waiting in line. So let's position our player. We're going to have 3-on-3 game. I'll just do it on this side here. Okay, this team starts serving. Okay, so we're going to play a game. We can play a game to 5, for example, and or 6. Doesn't matter. 10. You set up whatever makes sense for the team. And obviously, the ball is initiated by a serve to this side, and these players get an extra point if they can pass a ball to the net. And at this point, you could, with tape, or if you have lines on the ground, you could establish a criteria of, okay, not just having them focus on having their shoulders forward, although it is something we worked on during the session, so you could include that in your criteria. But I would suggest if we have a line on the ground in our gym, let's say that goes like this, we could identify this area as if the ball is passed this close to the net, then you get an extra point. And then you play out the rally, right? So you play the rally, there's a point for the rally, but every time someone passes a ball, either on serve receive or on the free ball to this zone, then they earn an extra point. Okay. So perhaps you start with your first round being the ball just needs to be there. And then during your second game, once you change the teams around, you could add the ball needs to be there, but we also need to have a good communication and also have our shoulders in front of our hips. Okay. So you can again, just progress in your demand for the players. All right. And so we would play it out, play games, switch to teams, and just play again. And then this is going to give our athletes lots of repetitions. And between games, I can have conversation with athletes about how it's going. Some teams will win very fast if they get extra points all the time because they're always passing it correct. Some teams won't. So then that creates opportunities for me to talk to the athletes and generate a bit more understanding from them. Okay. So again, I want to kind of wrap this up. I think you're starting to understand like what we have in these sections here. So my purpose here would be to, improve passing in a game situation. My skills would be passing again. Key cues would be very similar to here. Okay, would be exactly the same. I could still set up my players in that same position here based on my configuration of passing with my team and my system. Okay. Description would be exactly this. The execution criteria would be how you win. So it would be, I can write it down because it takes a second, but it could be 1 point for winning rally, 1 point for pass close to net / shoulders in front of hips, whatever you want to include there. Okay. And then it would be game to 10, for example. Then in my teaching points, again, they would be very similar. So your teaching points typically throughout a session stays the same, right? They stay the same because you keep progressing. Maybe you add a couple, but you still have that core shoulders in front of hips teaching point because it's the focus of my session. Okay, and then in here, you would have any of these skills here that you feel like reinforcing. Okay, it could be really any of them at this point. All right. So that's how you do it. That's how you use a seasonal plan. Okay, and plan to practice. I'm sorry, somehow all the stuff that I drew kind of disappeared, and now it's like small. So, anyways, but you followed along. So this is how we plan it, right? You have all of your information in your season plan, and then you take that information really quickly, okay, and plan this session where you have your physical skills training, you have a nice warm up, right? Through that, Now you get some repetitions. You get to go back on stuff that you worked on before, and you progress through a acquisition drill towards including some more cue reading, towards implementing that into some sort of game situation, which is not the full game. It's a modified game with a small-sided game with smaller courts and less players. But again, that's kind of what gives you the repetitions that you need, right? If you do a 6-on-6, well, your players are going to pass way less often, right, than if you do this type of game, all right? And plus, if you do a 6-on-6 and you do triple ball, they're only going to be passing once in a while, where in this, they're passing every rally, right? So that's kind of how you set up your practice with a nice progression using your seasonal plan so that you can achieve the objectives that you set out to achieve in here. Okay. See some questions. I see none. Okay. So I'm going to invite anyone who's watching this to then email me if you have a question. You can reach me at lpmainville@ontariovolleyball.org. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the planning process. And so have fun with your seasonal plan, with your practice planning. And again, I'm doing this with you, talking it out loud. So it takes a lot, it takes a long time. It took me here an hour. But like I said, if you do this by yourself with your seasonal plan, you pick up the information and you can really plan. You can plan really, really fast. And the more you plan practices and you've done drills and you understand the progression of individual work towards including more cues towards some sort of small game situation, you're going to be able to do this in like half an hour, okay, with a good seasonal plan. So enjoy that process. And again, let me know if you have any questions. So thanks for being here, everyone. Take care.